You shouldn't have come. We invited you out of pity, my daughter-in-law said to me at her wedding to my son. I just smiled. I was expecting it. I gave a signal to the wedding coordinator and a video started playing on the screen. The Viper screamed with rage. My name is Gwendolyn Reed, and I'm 67 years old. For over 4 decades, I worked as a nurse at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital in a small coastal town in Maine, where everybody knows each other. My life hasn't been easy, but I've never been one to complain. I became a widow when my only son, Caleb, was just 7 years old. My husband, Bennett, died in a logging accident in the northern woods, leaving us alone with a mortgage that seemed impossible to pay. But we managed. I worked double shifts, accepted extra night rotations, and sacrificed my own dreams so Caleb could have a decent life and good education. My son grew up to be an honest, hard-working young man with a kind heart that filled me with pride. When he finished his engineering degree and got a good job at a construction firm in Portland, I felt all my efforts had been worthwhile. Everything changed 3 years ago when Caleb met Adrienne Blackwell at a company party. I remember perfectly the day he introduced her to me. She was a beautiful woman, 32 years old, with a dazzling smile and impeccable manners. She worked in the public relations department of the same company as Caleb. Her parents belonged to an old money family from Connecticut, owners of several properties and businesses along the coast. From the first moment, something about her troubled me. Perhaps it was the way her gaze changed when Caleb wasn't looking, or how her perfect smile seemed rehearsed. When we were alone, Adrienne displayed a coldness that contrasted sharply with the warmth she showed in front of my son. Your house is so rustic, Gwendolyn, she once said, scanning my modest home with her eyes, the same home where I had raised Caleb and kept all my memories. The way she pronounced rustic made it clear she considered it beneath her standards. As their relationship progressed, Caleb began visiting me less frequently. He always had excuses: work, social commitments, plans with Adrienne. In our small town, everyone knew me as Nurse Gwen, the woman who had cared for half the population at some point. Many respected me, but to Adrienne, I was just the nurse, as if my profession was something to be ashamed of. The first time I had real suspicions was 8 months before the wedding. Caleb had called me very excited to tell me he was coming to dinner to celebrate his birthday. But 2 hours before, Adrienne called him with a family emergency. Her grandmother was sick, and they had to immediately travel to Boston to visit her. That same night, I decided to go to the only fancy restaurant in our town, the Lighthouse, to try to console myself with a nice dinner. My favorite patient, Mrs. Winters, had given me a gift card that was about to expire. While waiting for my appetizer, I saw her. Adrienne was sitting in a discreet corner, accompanied by an older, well-dressed man with a watch that gleamed even from a distance. This wasn't a business meeting. He was caressing her hand, leaning in to whisper in her ear, and she was laughing in that special way I had only seen when she was flirting with Caleb. My heart raced, and my maternal instinct sounded like an alarm. I paid for my drink without touching it and discreetly followed them when they left. They headed to the Harbor View Hotel, the most expensive in town, and entered together, hands roaming over each other's bodies. The next day, I went to Caleb's apartment, determined to tell him what I had seen. But when I arrived, Adrienne was there, preparing his favorite breakfast, kissing him and talking about the grandmother who had miraculously recovered. Caleb seemed so happy, so in love, that the words froze in my throat. Mom, what a surprise to see you here, Caleb greeted me with a hug. Adrienne had to come back last night because her grandmother suddenly got better. Isn't she wonderful? She drove 3 hours back just to be with me this morning. Adrienne looked at me over Caleb's shoulder with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. At that moment, I knew I was facing a consummate actress, and that my son had completely fallen into her trap. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have spoken up then, risking your son's happiness, or kept quiet hoping your suspicions were unfounded? Little did I know that the trap was deeper than I could have imagined. From then on, I started paying more attention. I noticed details I had previously ignored. Adrienne always wore designer clothes, expensive handbags, and jewelry that cost more than I earned in months. However, Caleb had told me she was between jobs because she had left the company to look for new professional horizons. When she talked about her meetings with girlfriends, I would coincidentally run into some of them at the supermarket days later. And when I asked about Adrian, they were surprised because they hadn't seen her in weeks. The inconsistencies kept piling up. The day I made my final decision was when Caleb came to announce that he was moving in with Adrian. He was so excited, talking about marriage, children, a future that I saw built on lies. "She's the woman of my life, Mom," he told me with shining eyes. "I've never been so happy." While Caleb was in the bathroom, Adrian approached me with that cold smile she reserved for our moments alone. "You can stop pretending you like me, Gwendolyn," she whispered. "We both know I've never been good enough for your precious son." "I never said that," I replied, keeping calm. "You didn't need to say it. I see it in your eyes every time you look at me. But here's the reality. Caleb loves me, not you. And the more you try to come between us, the more he'll distance himself from you." Her words confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't about jealousy or paranoia. Adrian was consciously manipulating Caleb to distance him from me, and from anyone who might discover her true nature. That same night, after they left, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I withdrew my retirement savings and hired Tucker Dawson, a former police officer turned private investigator. I asked him to follow Adrienne and document her activities over the coming months. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Reed?" Tucker asked when I explained what I wanted. "This could destroy your relationship with your son if he finds out." "I'm sure," I replied with determination. "I'd rather risk losing Caleb temporarily than see him trapped forever in a marriage based on lies." Tucker's weekly reports confirmed my suspicions and revealed a reality even worse than I had imagined. Adrian had an established routine with different men. On Mondays and Thursdays, she met with Lawrence Kingsley, a married businessman who bought her jewelry and designer clothes. On Wednesdays, she frequented a gym instructor 20 years older than her, and some weekends she met with a divorced doctor who paid for her cosmetic treatments at exclusive clinics. As the months passed, I struggled between revealing the truth to Caleb or staying silent to avoid hurting him. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations moved forward. My son, completely in love, didn't see the warning signs that were so obvious to me. Adrian had selected the most exclusive venue in the county for the ceremony, an old converted mansion with centuries-old gardens. The cost was astronomical. Caleb told me that Adrian's parents would pay most of it, but that he wanted to contribute with his savings too. "No, son," I told him. "Let me help you. I have a small inheritance I've been saving for a special moment." I lied. There was no inheritance. I used my retirement savings, the same money I had been accumulating for decades to have a dignified retirement. I paid half of that wedding without Caleb knowing, sacrificing my financial future for his happiness. As the date approached, Adrienne's behavior became more erratic. Her meetings with other men increased, as if she wanted to take advantage of her last weeks of freedom before marriage. Tucker showed me photos of her passionately kissing the businessman, just 2 weeks before the wedding. Each new piece of evidence broke my heart. Not for me, but for Caleb. How could I show him all this without destroying him? But also, how could I let him marry a woman who betrayed him so shamelessly? Finally, I made a decision. I would talk to Lana Mercer, the wedding coordinator, a professional woman who had worked with me on the preparations. She knew I had paid a significant portion of the wedding, though Caleb still believed in the fictitious inheritance. "Lana," I said quietly during our last meeting before the wedding, "I need to ask you for something special." I explained my plan. If during the reception I gave her a specific signal, she should show a video on the screens in the hall, a video that I would provide on a flash drive, the day of the ceremony. "Mrs. Reed," Lana responded with a concerned expression, "are you sure you want to do this? A revelation like this, in the middle of the celebration?" "I'm aware of the consequences," I replied. "But I have my reasons, and I'm willing to take full responsibility." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. As I got ready, taking special care with my appearance, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and resolve. I put on my only elegant dress, a navy blue model I had bought specifically for the occasion, and styled my hair in a simple but elegant bun. Upon arriving at the ceremony, I immediately noticed that I had been assigned a seat in the third row, not in the first as is traditionally appropriate for the mother of the groom. Adrian's parents occupied prominent places, while I was relegated among distant acquaintances. The message was clear. For them, I wasn't part of the real family. Caleb looked radiant in his suit, waiting by the altar. When Adrian made her triumphant entrance in a dress that cost more than I earned in a year, whispers of admiration swept through the church. She truly looked beautiful, like a fairy tale princess. No one could imagine the darkness hiding behind that facade of perfection. During the ceremony, I maintained my composure. I smiled, applauded when everyone did, and embraced Caleb with genuine love when I had the chance. The problem wasn't Adrienne, I reminded myself internally. The problem was her deception, her lies, the way she manipulated my son for her benefit. After the religious ceremony, the guests moved to the reception hall. I tried to be discreet, watching how my son and his now wife received congratulations from the numerous guests, many of whom I didn't know. That's when it happened. Adrian approached me, taking my arm with more force than necessary. "Gwendolyn, I need to talk to you for a moment," she said in a sweet voice, but loud enough for several nearby guests to hear. She led me to a corner of the hall, secluded but visible. Her smile never faltered, but her eyes conveyed absolute coldness. "I wanted to thank you for coming today," she began with a condescending tone. "I know it must be difficult for someone like you to be in such an elegant place." The air seemed to leave my lungs. "Someone like me?" I asked, though I knew perfectly well what she meant. Adrian leaned slightly toward me, her voice a venomous whisper. "Don't play dumb, Gwendolyn. We all know you don't belong here. Caleb and I discussed a lot about whether to invite you or not." The words that followed were burned into my memory like a hot iron. In the end, we decided it would be cruel not to. After all, you are his mother, but let's be honest, you shouldn't have come. We invited you out of pity. The world seemed to stop around me. I saw the looks of several guests who had witnessed the scene, some with expressions of shock, others with poorly disguised pity. Humiliation coursed through me like a wave of fire, burning every inch of my dignity. But then, something unexpected happened within me. Instead of the tears that Adrienne clearly expected, I felt an icy calm settle in my chest. All these months containing the truth, protecting Caleb, enduring the subtle contempt of this woman, it had all come to an end. A slow smile spread across my face, and for the first time I saw Adrian's expression waver. "Thank you for being so honest with me, Adrian," I said in a calm voice that surprised even myself. "I appreciate your sincerity." I turned and walked toward the main hall, leaving Adrian confused. Guests continued to look at me, but I kept my head high. The flash drive weighed in my purse like a constant reminder of the decision I had made. As guests took their seats for dinner, I located Lana and gave her a discreet gesture. She responded with an almost imperceptible nod and headed toward the technical area. Caleb rose to give his thank you speech. He spoke about love, about new beginnings, about building a family. Adrian radiated at his side, as if she truly loved him, as if everything were real. When Caleb finished, I slowly rose from my seat. An expectant silence fell over the hall. It wasn't common for the mother of the groom to speak during the reception. "Excuse the interruption," I said in a clear, firm voice, "but I also have something to share with all of you." Caleb looked at me in surprise, but with an encouraging smile. Adrienne, however, had an expression of growing alarm on her face. I made a small signal to Lana, who immediately caught it. "I've prepared a small video," I continued. "Something special for the newlyweds and all the guests." The screens installed around the hall lit up and the sound system came to life. What followed would change our lives forever. The first image was innocent. A photograph of Caleb and Adrian on their first dating anniversary. The guests smiled, expecting a typical sentimental wedding video. But I knew what was coming next. This is a tribute to true love, I announced from my position, and to the importance of really knowing the person with whom you plan to spend the rest of your life. Caleb smiled at me affectionately, completely unaware of what was about to be revealed. Adrian, on the other hand, had gone pale. Her eyes were fixed on the screens, with an expression I immediately recognized: pure terror. The second image completely changed the atmosphere. It was a photograph of Adrian passionately kissing Lawrence Kingsley in an exclusive restaurant. The date in the corner of the image clearly showed it had been taken just a month earlier, during her engagement to Caleb. A murmur of shock ran through the hall. My son stood frozen, his smile slowly fading as he processed what he was seeing. "What is this?" Adrian shouted, her voice losing all composure. "Turn that off! Turn that off, right now!" But the images continued, one after another. Photographs and short videos of Adrienne with different men during her relationship with Caleb. In expensive restaurants, in hotels, in luxury apartments. Some were intimate, others clearly romantic. All were dated and geolocated with forensic precision. The hall had erupted into chaos. Guests were rising from their seats, some recording with their phones, others arguing loudly. Adrian's parents looked mortified, while my few family members present looked at me with a mix of horror and admiration. "Caleb, my love!" Adrian shouted over the noise, trying to take his arm. "This is false. Your mother is crazy. She has manipulated these images." Caleb pulled away from her abruptly, his face a mask of pain and confusion. "Are these photos real?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "Adrian, look me in the eyes and tell me if these photos are real." Adrian opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water. Instead of answering, she turned to me with a fury I had never seen before. "You bitter witch!" she screamed in front of all the guests. "You can't stand that your son is happy. You've always been jealous of me. You've always tried to sabotage our relationship." Her mask of perfection had completely fallen. This was the real Adrienne, the one I had seen in glimpses for 3 years, but that Caleb had never witnessed. "Jealous?" I repeated calmly, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Adrienne, dear, exactly what should I be jealous of?" Then the most devastating video appeared on the screen. Adrian in a hotel room with Lawrence Kingsley, clearly in an intimate situation. The date showed it had been recorded just 2 weeks before the wedding. Caleb made a sound I'll never forget. An animal groan of pure pain. He staggered as if he had been physically hit. "Enough!" shouted Adrian's father, rising from his seat. "This is defamation. I'll call the police." "Please do," I responded serenely. "I'm sure they'd love to see all the evidence I have saved." Adrian turned desperately to the guests, her eyes filling with tears that seemed more of rage than sadness. "This is revenge," she cried. "This woman is obsessed with me. She's hired people to follow me, to ruin my life. She's a stalker." But her words sounded hollow. The images were too clear, too consistent, too well documented to be fake. Caleb finally found his voice. "How long?" he asked in a whisper that somehow was heard throughout the silenced hall. "How long have you been with other men?" Adrian looked at him with bulging eyes, realizing she had lost all control of the situation. "Caleb, love, I can explain everything. These images are taken out of context." "How long, Adrian?" he interrupted, this time louder. The repetition of the question broke her. For a moment I saw a flash of truth in her eyes before she became defensive again. "I don't have to explain anything to you," she burst out, "and least of all in front of this manipulative witch you have for a mother." The insult went too far, even for guests who had been in shock. A murmur of disapproval ran through the hall. Attacking a mother on the day of her son's wedding was a social taboo that even the most understanding couldn't tolerate. Lana, following my previous instructions, began to turn off the screens. The show was over, but the damage was done. Caleb slowly removed his wedding ring and let it drop onto the main table. The sound of metal against crystal resonated in the tense silence. "The wedding is over," he announced in a broken voice. "Everyone can go home." Adrian made one last desperate attempt. She knelt before him in her wedding dress, grabbing his suit. "Caleb, please. We can fix this. It was just sex. It didn't mean anything. You're the only one I love." The inadvertent confession made Caleb back away as if she had bitten him like a snake. "Just sex," he repeated incredulously. "Just sex with how many men, Adrian?" She realized her mistake too late. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Adrian's parents took her by the arms, lifting her from the floor. Her mother shot me a look of pure hatred before dragging her sobbing daughter out of the hall. "This isn't over," Adrian shouted, as she was forcibly removed. "I'm going to sue you. I'm going to destroy you. You don't know who you're messing with." Her threats faded as she disappeared through the door, leaving behind a hall full of shocked guests and a devastated groom. Caleb approached me slowly. His face was a mix of pain, confusion, and something I couldn't immediately identify. "Mom," he said in a hoarse voice. How, how did you know all this?" The question I had been dreading had finally arrived. Now I had to face the consequences of my decision. As I looked at my destroyed son, I realized that saving someone you love sometimes means becoming the villain in their story. At least temporarily. I was about to tell him everything, but the turmoil in the room was too much. Guests were whispering, some were leaving, and others were just staring at us. Would Caleb hate me for what I did, or would he eventually understand that I did it out of love? The truth was about to come out, one way or another. The days following the wedding disaster were the most difficult of my life. Caleb had completely disappeared. He didn't answer my calls, didn't answer the door when I went to his apartment, and had taken leave from his job. I found out from his boss that he was going through a personal crisis. I knew he needed time to process what had happened, but the uncertainty was killing me. Had I done the right thing, or had I destroyed my relationship with my son forever? Each night I went to bed, wondering if my decision had been out of love or selfishness. Had I acted to protect Caleb or to satisfy my own jealousy and suspicions? Adrian's words echoed in my mind. "You've always been jealous of me." Was she right? Was it possible that, unconsciously, I had wanted to sabotage my son's happiness because I felt I was losing him? My colleagues at the hospital noticed my state. Janet, my supervisor and friend of decades, found me crying in the locker room after a particularly difficult shift. "Gwen, honey, what's going on? You haven't been yourself these weeks." "I've done something terrible, Janet," I confessed through tears. "I think I've lost my son forever." I told her everything, the suspicions, the investigator, the public humiliation at the wedding. Janet listened without judging, holding my hands in hers. "What you did was extreme," she finally admitted. "But coming from a mother who loves her son more than anything in the world, it's understandable. You gave him time to discover the truth himself, and he didn't. Sometimes, love requires painful decisions." Her words temporarily comforted me, but they didn't relieve the anguish of not hearing from Caleb. On Wednesday night, a week after the wedding that never was, my phone rang. It was Caleb. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. His voice sounded different, harder, colder than I had ever heard. "Of course, son. Do you want me to come to your place?" "No, come to the Harbor Cafe, the one near the park. Half an hour." He hung up before I could respond. I arrived 20 minutes before the agreed time, my hands trembling as I waited. When Caleb finally appeared, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost weight, had deep circles under his eyes, and his wrinkled clothes suggested he hadn't been taking care of himself. He sat across from me without greeting, ordered a black coffee, he who always took cappuccino with sugar, and studied me in silence for what seemed like an eternity. "How did you know?" he finally asked. I opened my mouth to explain, but he abruptly interrupted me. "No, I don't want explanations yet. I want facts. How did you know Adrian was cheating on me?" I took a deep breath. I hired someone to investigate her. His face hardened even more. You had her followed? Yes. For how long? 6 months. Caleb closed his eyes and put his hands to his head. Jesus, Mom. Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved my son from marrying a woman who didn't love him. I responded firmly. Saved? He laughed bitterly. You call this saving me? Humiliating me in front of 200 people? Destroying my reputation? Making me the laughingstock of the entire town? His words hurt more than I expected. Caleb, I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, he cut me off. Do you know what this week has been like for me? Do you know how many calls I've received? How many videos of the wedding are circulating on social media? I didn't know. And the guilt began to eat at me. Everyone is talking about this, Caleb continued. My colleagues, my friends, even strangers on the street recognize me as the guy from the ruined wedding. Do you have any idea how that feels? Son, I didn't think. Exactly. You didn't think. You didn't think about how it would affect me. You only thought about your need to be right, to prove that you always knew Adrienne wasn't good for me. His words were like stabs, but I knew I had to let him say them. And you know what the worst part is? He continued, his voice breaking slightly. That you were probably right, but that doesn't justify what you did. We remained silent for several minutes. I tried to find the right words while he visibly struggled with his emotions. You know what Adrienne told me yesterday? He finally asked. My stomach tightened. You talked to her? She came to my apartment. She cried, begged me, told me it was all your fault, that you had been harassing her, that you had manipulated the evidence, that you were obsessed with ruining her life. Caleb, you know that's not true. I know. He looked at me directly. Because to be honest, Mom, I don't know what to think of you anymore. The woman I thought I knew would never have done something like this. Those words broke my heart. I'm still the same person, son. I'm still your mother, who loves you more than anything in the world. A mother who has her son's girlfriend spied on, who keeps evidence for months waiting for the perfect moment to publicly humiliate her, he asked bitterly. A mother who saw that her son was being deceived and manipulated, and who did what she had to do to protect him, I replied with more firmness than I felt. Caleb leaned back in his chair, studying me as if I were a stranger. Adrienne told me something else, he continued. She told me, you always knew she wasn't good enough for me, that from day one you treated her coldly, that you never gave her a real chance. And what did you tell her? I told her to go to hell, he admitted. Because, as angry as I am with you, as betrayed as I feel, I know you would never lie about something like this. The photos were real, the videos were real, her infidelity was real. A small relief filtered into my chest. But Caleb wasn't finished. But that doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me, Mom. You didn't betray me by lying. You betrayed me by not trusting me enough to tell me the truth when you discovered it. If I had told you, would you have believed me? The question hung in the air between us. Caleb looked away toward the window, watching people pass by on the street. I don't know, he finally admitted. Probably not. I probably would have thought you were jealous or exaggerating. Then, do you understand why I did what I did? No, he looked at me again. I understand why you felt you had to do it, but that doesn't mean it was right. We fell silent again. I could see the internal struggle in his eyes, the love he had for me, fighting against the feeling of betrayal. You know what hurts the most? He eventually asked. I shook my head, fearful of the answer. That you were right, that for 3 years I was completely blind, that the woman I thought I loved was lying to my face every day, and I was too stupid to realize. Caleb, you're not stupid. Adrienne is very good at manipulating. How did I not see it, Mom? His voice broke. How could I be so in love with someone who didn't really exist? Seeing my son so broken destroyed me. I reached across the table to take his hand, but he withdrew it. No, he said softly. Not yet. I'm still very angry with you. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Caleb thought for a long time. I want to know everything, he finally said. I want to know exactly when you started suspecting her, what made you hire the investigator, and why you decided to wait until the day of the wedding to reveal it. Are you sure? Some things will hurt. I'm already hurt, Mom. What I need now is the complete truth. I nodded, knowing the time had come to tell him everything, even the parts I had hoped never to have to reveal. All right, but you need to know that everything I did was out of love, even if you don't feel that way now. Caleb nodded tensely. Talk. And so I began to tell him the story I had kept for 6 months, knowing that each word could bring us closer or drive us apart forever. It all started 8 months ago, I began, staring at my coffee cup to avoid Caleb's eyes. Remember when Adrian had that family emergency and canceled your birthday at the last minute? Caleb frowned. Yes, her grandmother was sick. She had to travel urgently to Boston. There was no emergency, son. That night I saw her at the lighthouse with an older man. They were clearly on a romantic date. Caleb's face hardened. Why didn't you tell me anything? Because I thought maybe there was an explanation, that perhaps he was a relative, an old family friend. But something in the way they behaved troubled me. I vividly remembered that night. They were at a private table in the corner. He was holding her hands, caressing her hair. Adrienne was laughing in that way she only does when she wants to seduce someone. The same way she laughed with you at the beginning. Caleb clenched his fist on the table. And what happened next? I followed them to the Harbor View Hotel. I saw them enter together. The confession came easier than I expected, but seeing the pain in Caleb's eyes made me question again my decision to tell him everything. The next day, I continued, I went to your apartment to talk to you. I was going to tell you what I had seen, but when I arrived, Adrienne was there, acting like the perfect girlfriend, making you breakfast, asking about your day, and that's why you decided not to tell me anything? I decided I needed more evidence, that a single night could have an innocent explanation, however unlikely it seemed. I lied. The truth was that I had tried to tell him that morning. But when I arrived at his apartment and saw Caleb with Adrian preparing his breakfast, I lost my courage. He was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, completely in love. Then I started paying more attention, I continued. Small things I had ignored before, like the fact that Adrian always had money for expensive things. But you had told me she was between jobs. Caleb nodded slowly. She always told me her parents gave her a monthly allowance. Her parents have money. Yes, but not as much as she spent. Handbags worth thousands of dollars. Designer shoes, weekly beauty treatments. The numbers didn't add up. Over the following weeks, I had begun to document the inconsistencies in Adrian's stories, her supposed business trips that didn't match any known company, her nights with girlfriends that the girlfriends didn't know about when I ran into them casually at the supermarket. When did you decide to hire the investigator? Asked Caleb. When you moved in with her 6 months ago. That day you came to tell me you had decided to live together. You were so excited. You talked about marriage, children, your future together, and I knew I had to be completely sure before ruining that. The truth was more complex. The day Caleb announced he was moving in with Adrienne, she had come with him to my apartment. While Caleb was in the bathroom, Adrienne approached me with that cold smile she reserved for when we were alone. You can stop pretending you like me, Gwendolyn, she had said quietly. We both know I was never good enough for your precious son. I never said that, I had responded. You didn't need to say it. I see it in your eyes every time you look at me. But here's the thing. Caleb loves me, not you. And the more you try to interfere, the more he'll distance himself from you. She had been right in part. Caleb had been gradually distancing himself from me during his relationship with Adrienne, always with perfectly reasonable excuses. The private investigator's name is Tucker Dawson, I told Caleb. He's a former police officer who specializes in infidelity cases. I paid him with my retirement savings. Caleb abruptly raised his head. Mom, you used your retirement savings? It was an investment in your happiness, I responded simply. My God, he muttered, running his hands through his hair. How much did you pay him? That doesn't matter now. How much, Mom? $8,000 for the 6 months of investigation? The figure left him speechless. I knew he was mentally calculating what that represented from my salary as a nurse. Tucker was very professional, I continued before he could protest. He presented weekly reports with photos, videos, location records. Adrian had a very clear routine. Monday and Thursday nights were for the businessman from the restaurant, Lawrence Kingsley. Wednesday afternoons were the turn of a gym instructor. Alternate weekends she went out with a divorced doctor. Caleb looked sick. 3 different men. Sometimes 4. Occasionally someone new would appear. Tucker thought some were paid dates. Men who gave her money in exchange for companionship. The reality was even worse than what I was telling him. Tucker had discovered that Adrian had profiles on several dating applications aimed at women seeking beneficial relationships with older, wealthy men. Basically, she was a kind of high-end escort. Why didn't you tell me anything during those 6 months? Caleb asked in a broken voice. Because every time I saw the evidence, a part of me hoped I was wrong. And why weren't you? Because I knew this would destroy you. But you decided to tell me eventually. I decided you had a right to know the truth before marrying her. Caleb fell silent for several minutes, processing everything I had told him. Why did you wait until the day of the wedding? He finally asked. Why didn't you tell me a week before? A month before? This was the question I had feared the most. Because I thought if I told you privately, Adrienne would find a way to convince you it was a lie. That I was jealous, that I had manipulated the evidence, that I was trying to sabotage your happiness. Showing the photos at the wedding was the only way to ensure she couldn't deny the evidence. With 200 witnesses, she couldn't claim the photos were fake or that I had staged everything. Caleb nodded slowly, understanding the cruel logic of my plan. I also knew, I admitted with difficulty, that if I waited until after the wedding, it would be too late. Divorce would have been more complicated, more costly, more painful for you. And you didn't think publicly humiliating me would also be painful? I thought the pain would be temporary, that eventually you would understand I did it out of love. Caleb leaned back in his chair, looking exhausted. You know what bothers me the most about all this? That during those 6 months, when you knew the truth, you let me plan a wedding, spend money, get excited about a future you knew was a lie. You let me live in a fantasy while you had all the evidence to destroy it. His words hit me like a slap. Caleb, I... He raised his hand to stop me. I understand why you did it. I even understand why you felt you had to wait until the wedding day. But that doesn't change the fact that you lied to me for 6 months. He was right. And I knew it. In my effort to protect him, I had ended up betraying his trust in a different but equally painful way. Is there anything else I need to know? He asked. There was much more. Sordid details about Adrian's activities that I never wanted Caleb to know. But I had told the essential. Just that everything I did was because I love you more than my own life, I said. And because the idea of seeing you married to someone who was using you was unbearable to me. Caleb nodded, but his expression remained distant. I need time to process all this, he finally said, to decide if I can forgive you. As I watched him get up and walk away, I realized that saving my son from Adrienne might have cost me my son forever. The weeks that followed were a torment of uncertainty. I immersed myself in my hospital work, taking extra shifts to keep my mind occupied. At night, when the silence became deafening, I obsessively checked my phone, waiting for a message or call that never came. The real impact of my actions became evident when I started noticing the looks on the street, the whispers at the supermarket. In a small town, news travels fast. Everyone knew what had happened at Caleb's wedding. For some, it was the scandal of the year. For others, a satisfying revenge story. Very few understood the agony behind my decision. One morning, while preparing medication for my patients, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Dr. Fleming, a colleague of years who had treated Caleb since he was a child. Gwen, he said softly, how are you doing? Surviving, I replied, trying to smile. I've seen Caleb, he commented, studying my reaction. He came to the clinic for a routine checkup. My heart raced. Is he okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, he's processing everything. He told me what happened. I didn't know what to say. Was Dr. Fleming judging me too? I'm not here to give an opinion on what you did, he continued, as if reading my thoughts. But I do want to tell you that Caleb loves you very much. The love between parents and children is complicated sometimes, but it's resilient. Give him time. His words gave me hope, a small light in the darkness I had been living in. That night, as I returned home after a long shift, I saw a car parked in front of my building. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized Caleb's car. I climbed the stairs faster than my tired legs wanted to allow, and there he was, sitting in the hallway next to my door. He stood up when he saw me, and for a moment neither of us knew what to do. Finally, he took a step toward me and without a word hugged me. A strong, desperate hug like the ones he gave me when he was a child and had nightmares. I clung to him, feeling the tears I had been holding back for weeks, finally finding their way out. I'm sorry, I whispered between sobs. I'm so sorry, son. I'm sorry too, he responded, his voice breaking as well. For disappearing, for not talking to you, for leaving you alone with all this. We entered my apartment and sat on the sofa, that old piece of furniture that had witnessed so many important moments in our lives. For a long time, we simply sat there, in silence, the weight of the past weeks hanging between us. I've been thinking a lot, Caleb finally said. About Adrienne, about you, about myself, about what it really means to love someone. I waited, giving him space to continue. At first I was furious with you, then with Adrienne, and finally with myself, for not seeing what was right in front of my eyes, for allowing someone to come between us. Caleb, it wasn't your fault. Let me finish, please, he interrupted me gently. What you did at the wedding was extreme. It humiliated me, hurt me, and made me question everything I thought I knew about you. But the more I think about it, the more I realize you didn't have any other choice. Adrian had manipulated me so completely that I would never have believed you if you had told me privately. And if I had married her. His voice trailed off, the magnitude of what had been avoided implicit in his silence. Yesterday, I ran into Lawrence Kingsley, he continued after a moment. It was a coincidence. I was at the bank and he walked in. I recognized him immediately from the photos. My stomach tightened. What happened? He recognized me too. He approached and said, "You're Adrienne's boyfriend, right? Not the ex-fiancé or the man she was going to marry, just the boyfriend." As if I were just another man in her life. Caleb paused, clearly recalling the conversation. Then he told me something that chilled me to the bone. He said, "That girl collects men like trophies. Each one served a different purpose. You were the stable one, the one who would give her social legitimacy. I was the one who gave her money and expensive gifts. The gym instructor gave her adventure. You were never her only love, Caleb. You were just a piece on her chessboard." The words hurt even me. I couldn't imagine how they had affected Caleb. You know what the worst part of that conversation was? He continued, that he seemed genuinely surprised that I didn't know, as if it were obvious to everyone except me. He told me I thought all the men in her life knew about the others. She wasn't particularly discreet. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the cruelty of those words. At that moment, Caleb finally said, "I fully understood why you did what you did, and I realized that if you hadn't done it, I would eventually discovered the truth in a much more painful way." He leaned forward, taking my hands in his. "I forgive you, Mom. And I hope you can forgive me for doubting you, for pulling away when you needed me most, for allowing Adrienne to treat you badly all these years." The tears returned to my eyes. "There's nothing to forgive, son. All I've ever wanted is for you to be happy." "I know," he smiled sadly. "And now I understand that sometimes, to be truly happy, we have to go through moments of pain and truth. You saved me, Mom. Not just from a marriage based on lies, but from a life of deception. That night, Caleb stayed over in his old bedroom. In the morning, we prepared breakfast together, like we used to do when he was a teenager. Things weren't completely resolved between us. We knew that there were wounds that would take time to heal, trust that needed to be rebuilt, but we had taken the first step on a path to reconciliation. Over the following months, our relationship strengthened in ways I wouldn't have believed possible. Caleb began visiting me regularly. We revived our traditions of Sunday dinners and movie marathons. He even started bringing friends over, something he hadn't done during his relationship with Adrienne. You know what I've realized? He told me one day while we were cooking together. That during the 3 years I was with Adrienne, I almost never came to visit you. I always had an excuse. I was tired. Adrienne had planned something. I had pending work. I nodded. I had noticed his growing absence, but had never wanted to pressure him. Now I realized that she deliberately scheduled things for the days I used to spend with you. Dinners with her parents, social events, weekend trips. There was always something more important. Caleb, you don't need to. Yes, I need to, he interrupted me gently. I need to say this. Adrian systematically separated me from you, and I allowed it because I thought that's how serious relationships were, that I had to choose between my girlfriend and my mother. He took a moment before continuing. But the truth is that a woman who really loved me would never have asked me to choose. She would have found ways to include you, not exclude you. His insight moved me deeply. Caleb had matured through this painful experience, gaining wisdom that I hoped would serve him for the rest of his life. I've started seeing someone, he confessed to me one day, 6 months after the wedding that never was. A colleague from work, Allison. She's calm, honest, and thinks you're amazing, by the way. You've already told her about me? I asked, surprised. Of course, he smiled. I told her everything about Adrienne, about what happened at the wedding, about how you saved me. And you know what she said? That if she ever has children, she hopes to be as brave and protective as you. Allison's words, as related by my son, were a balm to my heart. Perhaps not everyone judged me as harshly as I had feared. A few weeks later, Caleb invited me to dinner to meet Allison. When I arrived at the restaurant, anxiety gripped me. What if she didn't like me? What if she saw me as a meddling, controlling mother-in-law? My fears dissipated as soon as I met her. Allison was exactly as Caleb had described her. Kind, sincere, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She hugged me as if we were old friends. Caleb has told me so much about you, she said as we sat down. It's an honor to finally meet you. The honor is mine, I replied, immediately feeling comfortable with her. And please, call me Gwen. Dinner passed with laughter and easy conversations. There was no tension, no calculating looks, no attempts to exclude me. When Allison spoke about her plans with Caleb, she naturally included me in the conversation, asking for my opinion, showing interest in my experiences. At the end of the night, as Caleb was asking for the check, Allison leaned toward me. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For raising such a wonderful man. And for saving him from someone who didn't deserve him. I know it wasn't easy, and that you paid a very high price for it. But I want you to know that I understand. Sometimes true love requires impossible decisions. Her words reached my soul. For the first time since that fateful night of the wedding, I felt that someone truly understood what had happened, what I had felt. A year after the wedding that never was, we received news about Adrienne. She had moved to New York City, and according to rumors, was engaged to a foreign businessman 20 years her senior. Caleb received the news with indifference. I hope she's happy, he said simply, and that she finds whatever she's looking for. His response, free of bitterness or resentment, showed me how much he had healed. He was no longer the devastated young man from that night, but a man who had learned from a painful experience and had come out stronger. As for me, I had changed too. The experience had taught me about the limits of maternal love, about how far we are willing to go to protect our children. I didn't regret what I had done, but I had learned that even decisions made with the purest love can have unforeseen consequences. One afternoon, as Caleb and Allison were visiting me, the doorbell rang. It was Lana, the wedding coordinator that never was. I hadn't seen her since that night. I was passing by and wanted to say hello, she said with a shy smile. How are you, Gwen? I invited her in and introduced her to Allison. For an awkward moment, no one knew what to say. Finally, Lana broke the silence. I wanted you to know that I always believed you did the right thing, she said firmly. In my 15 years organizing weddings, I've seen many couples who shouldn't get married, but I had never seen someone with enough courage to stop a wedding for the right reasons. Caleb smiled, taking my hand. My mother has always been the bravest person I know, he said with pride. It took me time to understand it, but now I see it clearly. Later that night, when everyone had gone, I sat on my small balcony, looking at the stars. I thought about the long, tortuous road we had traveled, about the pain, the loss, the betrayal, and finally, the redemption. I remembered the words Adrienne had thrown at me like daggers that night. You shouldn't have come. We invited you out of pity. Words designed to destroy me, to make me feel small and insignificant. But instead of destroying me, they had given me the strength to act, to protect what I loved most in the world. Sometimes, the most difficult decisions are the only right ones. Sometimes, love means risking everything, even the relationship itself. And sometimes, as I discovered, true love always finds its way back home.